Welcome back. Nearly a full year after the tragic shooting death of cinematographer Helena Hutchinson on the movie set of Rust, a settlement has now been reached. Meanwhile, the show is set to go on with production resuming in January. Seb Gorka, the host of the Gorka Reality Check, and Jonathan Gillum, a former Navy SEAL and FBI agent, both join us now. Good to see you both. Seb, I want to start with you. This whole thing is very weird. So the settlement is reached, obviously, on the civil side. It has a feeling of a payoff to it, right? The husband of Helena Hutchins is now going to serve as an executive producer. That's a twist I don't think anybody saw coming, right? And it seems to settle. I'm sure there's some other payout part of this financially, but the New Mexico DA has put out a statement just recently, within the last hour or so, that's saying that might settle the civil part of it, but it's not going to affect the potential criminal charges. So what do you think's afoot here?
Well, there are advantages, of course, to Baldwin because he doesn't go to court. There's no civil action. He can't be deposed by the family of the director of photography who was killed by him. Yes, let me state that very clearly. Alec Baldwin shot the photographer, the director of photography of the movie Rust. So none of that material, none of that discovery, none of that deposition can be used against him in the criminal case. But I discussed this on my radio show today. This is so weird. I get the widower. I get the husband wanting compensation, wanting to, I don't know, set up some fund for his kids' college expenses or what have you. But then this statement he released where he wants to be the executive producer, have his name on the movie that's still going to be shot, the movie that is the reason for why his wife was killed. I mean, I know Hollywood is creepy, Sean, but this takes the biscuit.
That was the weird part to me, is that why would you want your name on the movie that your wife was killed on by Baldwin? Jonathan, I want to switch gears because there's another story that's in your wheelhouse. A study was released which shows that the FBI grossly unreported the number of times an armed citizen stopped an active shooting situation. The FBI percentage came in at just over 4%, but a separate study that was done by the Crime Prevention Research Center saw that figure come in at just over 34%. Which makes me think that somehow, I mean, this isn't like 2%, right? The FBI clearly is somehow trying to downplay the amount of times that somebody is stopping a crime.
Right. You know, again, we can always look whenever a federal agency's numbers, reporting numbers, are in line with the mainstream media. You know that something's pretty much wrong, especially when it has to do with guns. And I'll just give an example of how this plays out. Every year, I remember when I was in the FBI on the Joint Terrorism Task Force, every year, the director would come before Congress and say that at any given time we have 1,000 terrorism cases. And while that's a true statistic, the reality is only about 6 of those 1,000 would actually materialize into arrest for people that were convicted or charged with a terroristic crime. So that's the reality of the numbers. And so they never report that, right? Because they want to inflate these numbers to make it look like they're involved with these incredible cases. And on the other hand, you have now where where good guys have stopped a bad guy with a gun 34.4% of the time, and they manipulate that down by just changing it, saying, well, this was gang related, or there was another crime involved here, or it never materialized into a shooting. And the good guy didn't actually shoot, he just pulled his gun. So they take all that off of the table and only report the 4.4% of shootings that were actually where somebody was going to commit a mass shooting. It's all a numbers game, and it's all politics.
You know, Seb, you've worked with the FBI a lot in the past. Do you think this is a shift in culture, or is this something that's been going on for a while?
It saddens me. I had Carl Seraphim, FBI whistleblower, on the radio show last week. He said it's a culture inside. It's not just the 7th floor of the Hoover building. Look at the case of Mark Houck. This is a pro-life father who had a case against him dismissed, an allegation of a misdemeanor outside an abortion clinic when a crazy pro-death guy was screaming in the face of his 12-year-old child, thrown out of the local court. And what does the FBI do? I mean, God bless real FBI guys like Jonathan Gilliam, but to have 24 agents with loaded M4s in ceramic-plated hard vests bust into his house as his children are screaming, aim the rifle at his wife on a misdemeanor assault charge that was thrown out of the court last summer. That's today's FBI. That's why, you know, this, where is it? It's here. Let me show you a prop. I made this a couple of weeks ago. It is now the most popular thing on my website. And I was told it's too edgy. It says the FBI, Joe Biden's Gestapo. I think it's not serious enough. This is a political police force, and it is out of control, and it serves one interest. It serves the Democrat Party, Sean.
Yeah, I saw that interview that you did. It was really good. Jonathan, in the last minute, I want to just pick up on that case that Seb was referring to. Was that overkill by the FBI? Because it seems like we've talked about it here on the show. For a father like that with charges that were dropped, that seemed really excessive.
Yeah, I don't think, you know, the FBI typically, when I was in one-off crimes that don't amount to anything, we never got involved with that stuff. We'd leave that to the local authorities. But to see the FBI get involved with something that wasn't a conspiracy, that wasn't something where injury was even considered in this case, and where the locals dropped it, to me, it immediately shows me that this is the special interest of the left, and that's why this occurred, and the reason it occurred when it occurred. That's another thing, is you can easily look at when the FBI and the DOJ does something, and it's typically molded around elections or when something else is going on, so they can emphasize whatever that is politically.
Yeah. Seb, Jonathan, always a pleasure. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks, Sean.